the #1 long-form writer that helps SEOs outrank competition at the click of a button using real-time research and NLP. Start ranking content today with contentatscale.ai.
Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
Thank you very much. What a warm welcome. So yeah, it's my second time speaking here, so I'm really pumped to be here again. I'm a freelance SEO. I've got about 15 years of experience in SEO in total. One of them is full freelance and the rest is agency side. And during both of those careers, include the new one, I've worked with quite a few global brands that wanted to go global with their SEO. So they've either seen an opportunity in Google Analytics, for example, and kind of seen that their product or service offering is relevant to certain regions and they want to expand, or they already got visibility in those regions and they want to increase it. The only issue is, during my time working on all those different campaigns, I've run into some common issues that you can probably relate to. So limited expertise internally. So one of the money-saving tips that I used in working on agency side is to get local teams to do basic SEO skills like content ideation, keyword research, content localization, leveraging their local knowledge and their industry expertise and kind of focusing on that. And we kind of do the rest in terms of validating keywords. But we found that there was a severe lack of internal expertise to basically do that. The other issue we had was a lack of resources, so people, resource, and budgets. So if we're dealing with multiple countries, we've got a global budget that we need to split all these different ways and prioritize according to the market size and opportunity. And when you get to the smaller markets, there's just next to no budget left. And then low buy-in as well. So, people, if we're scaling SEO tasks to teams where SEO isn't their primary job, then, they think, oh, why do I need to do this? It's not part of my job description. And you've got to kind of work on that to get the most out of them. So through a lot of trial and error, I've managed to figure out ways that work for me to kind of mitigate all these issues. So I'm going to go through them along with some best practice bits of how to just set up a global strategy overall. So this is probably my favorite part of starting an SEO campaign because it sets the rules in terms of, what do we need to achieve business-wise and how can we closely relate to our digital KPIs as much as possible. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with SEO KPIs or you've joined a project where you weren't involved in that ideation and you've seen that, either the KPI is related to like a micrometric where it's something like keyword visibility or domain authority, or you've got a macro, KPI like revenue, but it isn't closely related or it's not realistic and the time frame is quite tight. So that's my kind of worst nightmare of joining a campaign halfway through and not having a say and just kind of trying to meet KPIs. So what I tend to do is kind of join from the start and basically get those business KPIs and figure out where is the shortfall of revenue or inquiries that we need to fill, and then calculate working backwards, okay, how much search volume from a sample set of keywords do we need in order to generate that additional traffic and revenue to a website. So, I'm going to do a blog post to explain, the calculations and all that. But essentially, it's using average click-through rates in first page of Google. If you rank anywhere for a certain amount of keywords on page 1, and they want to go to the website, what's your average conversion rate once they land? Any other factors like, e-commerce conversion rate. And then if it's e-commerce, you've got to think of average order value from the transactions to then get to that final figure. So, SEO forecasting isn't, it's quite broad and it's not the best way to do it, but you can get close to your business targets as possible to basically back your SEO KPIs up with data. And then the best part of this stage is to start getting buy-in from the CEOs, or if you're partnering with a global SEO marketing manager, or if you're that global manager, you need to chat to your senior team to say, look, here are our KPIs, they're backed up by all this data. We've overshot it, so we're going to have way more search volume than we think we'll need, and we think we can hit these if we do X, Y, Z tasks. So we start the buying conversation early, and I usually like to get buy-in from the top down, and then that helps me later on in the process working with local teams to basically say, this is signed off, so let's get further buy-in to relate these KPIs to you guys and your targets and tasks. So obviously the next stage is then looking at your own data. So figuring out, okay, where are the visits coming from currently? How are they engaging and converting on the site? And are there any quick, obvious wins? So for example, if you've got a lot of traffic coming from a country that you're not fully targeting yet, but they're not engaging or converting well, but you know that the service offering is super relevant to them, then you know that things like on-site SEO, content localization, doing keyword research from scratch to make the search intent versus where they land super relevant are the quick wins that you need to do. And then sticking with identifying quick wins, keyword visibility is a must to kind of start researching earlier on. And as I mentioned, ideally to do before you set KPIs as well, if you can. So usually I like to do this in the prospecting stage before we even sign a contract. If I fully qualified a lead and thought, oh, this is worth spending, half a day digging into this and doing some mini keyword research on separate regions to figure out how much search volume can I get. How much are they currently getting in those regions? Who are the local competitors? And where are the quick wins and the shortfalls to kind of fill those gaps? So ideally, I like to use a tool like SEMrush or SEO Monitor, geo-target the search engine to that local region, and find local competitors signed off by the business team. So search competitors versus business competitors to then figure out where those quick wins are. And the next useful metric, which isn't an exact science, but is quite useful still, is domain authority. So like domain rating in Ahrefs, for example, is what it's called exactly. So again, using those same competitors and figuring out in each region, how close are you in terms of your authority versus them? And if, for example, your domain authority is relatively higher than your competition, then backlinks are kind of okay for now. So let's put our priorities into on-site SEO, content localization, technical SEO. And on the flip side, if your authority is lower than your competition, then you're looking at, focusing on link building and link earning to start with, alongside all those other stuff. And then market research is quite crucial as well. So having a look, and this is quite broad, but having a look at your target regions, your prospective target regions, and seeing, how many internet users are in those regions. The data is quite broad, but is still quite useful. And obviously combining this with your own data and analytics to see where's the traffic actually coming from currently versus what could we potentially get from these regions. And this is quite a nice prompt to then say, okay, maybe we need to do keyword research in regions that we didn't know might have had a massive, market share other than the obvious top countries at the top there. So this is a useful kind of case to kind of go through and then identify, oh, I need to prioritize these regions to do keyword research initially, back that up with search volume data, and then take it from there. And then the next obvious step is search engine market share in each region. So we know who the top search engines are, obviously, but it's important to see how much of the market do they take up. And ideally, you should be optimizing for all search engines, and they all closely replicate Google's algorithm anyway. But it's always useful to see if there's any obviously outliers like China and obviously Russia with Yandex, etc. to see, okay, how do I cater to them specifically? Do I need to do anything special for them? Or what are the title and meta description limits for all these different search engines? And then looking at the local native content, and this is quite a key part as well. So in my early career, I just assumed, basically, which is a bad thing to do, not looking into the data of what are the prominent native languages spoken in each region. Is it just the main one? Is it worth putting our budget if we've got it into other popular languages as well? So having a look at what are the prominent languages in each region and cross-referencing that with analytics data. So basically looking like using the GA4 demographics detail report, for example, to kind of cross-reference that. And looking at the prominent social media platforms in each region as well, because obviously SEO and no channel is really done in silo these days. So having a look at how, during attribution funnel, if you can visualize that, how that is supported by the local, social media channels, and then how can we use this to do obviously link prospecting, link building, content marketing later on. So seeing, are there any obvious differences in each region that I need to pay attention to, or is it just Facebook, for example, Messenger, Telegram, etc. for India, and the usuals for the rest of the world? And then how do users interact and engage and inquire? So it's more of a lead gen point, but obviously, using chat and emails and WhatsApp. But one anecdotal point I've got there under India is that people for a couple of my clients, preferred to pick up the phone and do click to call in PPC ads, and that tend to work really well versus, email inquiry forms. So that leads on nicely to the next point, to basically talk to your local teams. So if you're in-house and you've got teams in each region, or you've got people that cover multiple regions and they've got knowledge, how do customers inquire with them? Are they quite formal during the lead gen stage? Are they, what kind of technical knowledge do these teams have that can inform data? And it's a nice tie-in into EEAT as well, to see, okay, how can we rope them into becoming authors and basically produce all that rich content under blogs, for example, or just inform our strategy and our keyword research and content localization. So this is a really key part to figure out how people inquire and what they engage with. So assuming that we've got all of this great research, like market research validated by actual data, as much as you can, we can start to kind of prioritize by looking at quick wins, for example, in these example regions, and say, okay, the US and China, for example. So US doesn't have a lot of quick wins, but they have the most resource. So I made a judgment call in this example to prioritize the US because they've got a massive market versus the other regions where I've taken into consideration they've got okay quick wins or great quick wins, but they might not have as much resource. So I've kind of prioritized it accordingly. So it's good to kind of see, resource versus quick wins and big markets, what should I put my investment into? So you're not going to get it right 100% first time. There's going to be a bit of learnings to this, but at least you kind of put your best foot forward as much as possible with data. And the other way I like to prioritize campaigns in general, not just the international ones, is having a look at how many ranking factors I can hit in a campaign. So having a look at a study like, say, from Search Engine Journal or Backlinko, who do a survey every year from SEOs, or what are the most impactful ranking signals, based on your own data, like what affected performance. And then you can have a think, like obviously link building and rich content, EEAT are usually at the top, local SEO, etc., possibly domain name, domain extension. So those kinds of things and core vital. So figuring out, okay, what do I need to prioritize versus what can I actually do with the resources I've got at hand? And then putting the other tasks either on a back burner for now or allocating it to other external sources that might be able to do it if you've got the budget to pay them. And having a real think about who can do what well. So I've been guilty of this lots of times where I've tried to save money for a client and I thought, I'm just going to rewrite all these title tags, meta description, just before ChatGPT, and then figuring out, okay, having a go at this and coming across some rich content like white papers, long-form blogs, and thinking, okay, this title tag and meta description isn't attractive, it's not a call to action, it's not going to make me want to click on it, so I need some creative input. So basically, think about what you can do well versus other people in your teams and, external people, freelancers, agencies, etc., because your competition more than likely will have the right people doing the right tasks. So I'm picking a few delivery examples for kind of best practice of setting up a global campaign. But let's just say that you've got all of your tasks prioritized and you've got a setup tasks ongoing and you've got a workflow targeting each region. So this is a good stage to be at. So now you can have a look at best practice things like how to pick the right site structure and think about geo-targeting. So what's the best method to do? So obviously you've got the free methods. So you've got CCTLD, country code top level domain like .fr, .uk, etc. This is one of the preferred methods, the preferred method from Google. It's a strong geo signal to Google and a strong trust signal to users, because obviously as a user yourself, you can see a .co.uk website if the product is specific to the UK and you want next day delivery and all that, and you're reassured that, okay, this is going to arrive quickly, The cons of this is that if you don't have a CCTLD already for that separate country, then you're starting with a domain authority of 0 from scratch. So it's likely, it's going to take you at least a year to establish ranking and authority in that region relative to how much budget you've got for like content marketing, link building, etc. Subfolders is my preferred method where we've got a neutral domain like a .com or a .org that has existing domain authority, and it can essentially pass down its existing authority to these subfolders through internal links and related content. So this is the next best thing that I've used quite often. So the pro is relatively easy to set up, doesn't cost anything except for people time. A con is that it's not as good geo-targeting signal as a .co.uk, .fr, etc., but it's the next best thing. And there's nothing stopping you later on after you build that authority to then redirect your /FRFR, etc., to a .fr domain if you've got the budget and authority at that time. Similar to subfolders, we've got subdomains as well, so fr.domain.com. So it's a similar thing, but it's technically seen as a separate domain. And I saw a post recently, I can't remember the guy's name from Google, saying that people are abusing the subdomain setting, and basically established domains are selling their subdomains to brands that have topics nothing to do with the main domain. So that's kind of a big issue at the moment, and someone from Google, I should find the name, I'll tweet it out, asked people to report websites that are doing this. And this is going to hurt people, I think, that are using subdomains legitly because they're with the same topic but different target countries. So that's something to consider as well. And technically, it's a separate domain. So it'll take a while to bed in where Google realizes, oh, that domain is part of that root domain. So with all of that all those changes, you want to have a think about, are you drastically changing content and URLs? And if so, because you might have some existing visibility score and existing traffic. It might not be massive traffic, but it may be super engaged. So super relevant keywords with engaging content that you might not have picked up on. So it's worthwhile to do a content value audit to figure out, what's working currently. And if I do want to X these pages off, maybe I want to repurpose the topics within them in maybe a long form blog post or consolidate a bunch of pages before you just redirect everything. And strongly consider redirecting like-for-like pages as well. So even if you have a product that no longer exists or a product category, for example, consider using a blog post where you basically say, oh, this is a product that used to be, and this is the replacement, or these are the alternative services. Just try and keep capturing that data, that user traffic, sorry. So I did a migration talk this time last year, I believe, as well, so I've got some best practice in there about migrations. So technical SEO is one of the good quick wins I like to work through first in a campaign as well. And it's great when you've got a .com, for example, and you can cascade the changes throughout all the different country folders. So hreflang is obviously the top priority. So not going too much into it because we've got a really good hreflang tag talk coming next as well. So essentially you can make savings just thinking about the lack of resource and budget as well by using ChatGPT or free plugins, for example, like Polyang in WordPress to kind of scale this down. And basically, or even just strategize what format and tags and ISO code do my folders and my tags need to be in. Core Web Vitals is usually top of the priority list when I do tech audits. And within Core Web Vitals, it is usually JavaScript and CSS issues, followed by images. So they're either too big in terms of file numbers or actual dimension sizes per screen. So these are things that you can change yourself in most CMSs using free tools online like Pixlr and Photopea and obviously Photoshop and free plugins. Smush it, I always forget that one. So duplicate content is a common issue, as well as indexation and SERP optimization. So just realized I need to speed up a little bit. So you can find the data in Google Search Console for free, or tools like OnCrawl or SiteBulb, and basically do things like 404 redirects, canonical tags, rewrite content, optimize titles and metas. So all these things you can do within CMSs. So these are one of the key things in terms of keyword localization and content re-research. So 65% of non-native English speakers prefer content in their native tongue. I just wanted to throw that in there just to remind you guys and act as a prompt to basically research each individual region and figure out what are the most prominent languages. And essentially, think about each region as an individual region. I always throw dogs in there. It's just, should have thrown it out at the start, actually. So yeah, in this example, you've got two topics. So you've got dog jumpers, dog fancy dress, literally. And if you put dogs in your slides, you'll go under, for hours, you'll just spend just looking at images and stuff. So And then what I've done in this example is, so people make the mistake, and that's why I said re-research rather than localization, because they might think, oh, I'll just translate and end up with the same amount of keywords. And they might get dismayed when they actually end up with like 1 keyword or 2 keywords after they've done that. But you need to think of it as, if you weren't doing international and you're just focusing on Spanish speakers in Spain, and those are the keywords you have, then those are kind of the keywords you have. And then maybe you have to diversify and go long tail and think about informational searches as well. So re-research topics and localize content or transcreate it. So it's a popular term, and essentially think about, and Spanish is a good example, being one of the most popular languages across multiple regions, but each region has a cultural difference. So you've got to source native speakers, ideally, that have those cultural nuances and can figure out, okay, what term do I need to use, even what imagery, what type of call to action text, etc., white papers and that. Do people inquire by, clicking on email, downloading white papers, or they just straight up, do a phone call? So you need to really consider that. And then another quick win is local SEO, specifically NAP, name, address, phone number optimization. So essentially finding the locally prominent platforms in each region, and the only chunky translation or transcreation text would be a company description, maybe 50 to 200 words. After that, everything else is the business details that any in-house marketer can basically cascade onto the different platforms. And taking that step further, so citations and links, using your NAP details per region, it's a really good geo-targeting signal to do this local SEO, local link building. So finding the local prominent, we'll say directories, but websites that humans use to look up businesses and engage with them, basically. And I threw in Bright Local as an example where you can do citation bursts for those lists of countries. There are other local similar services as well if your country isn't on that list. And it's always advised to partner this task with a human as well. And link building quick wins as well. So there are a few that you do in SEO campaigns before you even look at doing the chunky, proper link building stuff with, link earning through content marketing, etc. So broken link building and link reclamation is a really good place to start. So for example, you can use Ahrefs, put your website or your competitor's website in there and see what links to a 404 page, and decide whether you could reinstate pages that once ranked or at least earned a decent link from a decent website with high domain authority. And so you can go through that exercise for your website, and then for your competitors, you can do the same thing, plus see where links are pointing to and whether that content is still updated or valid or worthwhile, and if you can sneakily kind of write your version of it or find a version that you can cater to and ask the webmaster to replace it with yours. So those are some nice quick wins there. And other quick wins include unlinked brand mentions and unlinked original images. So that used to be a big one for me when I worked on the agency side, where we've got loads of original images that we didn't even think about in training material, etc. And it was all being reused basically in image search. And we didn't think about, putting them all into a section of images, stock images for SEO, and kind of trying to not monetize it, but try and earn links and make the most out of that resource. So have a think doing reverse image searches for popular images on your website and seeing, if they will link back to you, or at the least use your source code address so that the image refers to your server, which is the next best thing to getting a link, a physical link. And brand mentions as well. Obviously, you can do a search in Ahrefs as well, which is good for this, and get links to your brand name. And then have a look at the current resources you've got. So partners, associations, sponsorships, so anyone that can basically, you have a relationship with, that have a decent website that's relevant to your industry or location, and get links from them. So yeah, I did get a lot of quick wins from that exercise, but I kind of had to leave out a graph showing that because of time. So obviously you're thinking about, should I use an agency versus a bunch of freelancers? So there's pros and cons to this, obviously. So agency has most of the pros, so scalable, resource expertise, consistent quality and service, and you could even swap between channels if you feel like doing paid or social, in theory. I mean, my agencies used to do that. A con is obviously the cost. But this shouldn't be the limit to how you think about working with agencies. So quite often on the agency side, I would set up a strategy with a marketing manager and basically help them scale it to all the different regions and have a minimal retainer to check in with them and validate work with them. So, if you probe a little bit and get past all the salesy stuff of, no, we want to do everything, which is what I used to do as well. And you can say, okay, can we work in this limited way? And even do some upskilling and training with them as well. Have a think about multiple freelancers as well, because I've used this quite a bit. So the pros is they've got the same expertise, cost effective and flexible. A con is if you're using multiple freelancers, then the work and quality of service communication could be inconsistent. Lack of scalability and resources. If you've got sprints and last minute things you need to scale up, and you'll have to manage a workflow. So you'll have to think, do I have the time and temperament to manage so many different people? And you have to factor that into your own budget as well, time budget, for example. So you can have a think, going back to your priorities, where do I need to put these resources? And, is it a combination of my biggest market, my biggest budget, agency versus in-house freelancer, or something like this, where you basically developed a strategy with an agency or freelancer, passed it down to all the different countries, and you used a combination of all these different resources. It does look quite messy, but it is achievable with good workflows and processes. And internal staff are a massive resource as well, in my experience. So one of the hardest things to come by is local knowledge and expertise in your industry and the community, and the tone of voice in a company, for example. They can spot things before you can. So what I tend to do was bolt on to that experience with SEO knowledge. So how to identify a good keyword, a good backlink, how to localize content, and basically pass on work to them, create a workflow, make it super easy for them to pass work back to myself and or their in-house marketing manager, and basically validate it. And obviously you can use AI to help scale up that validation process, as well as making other smaller tasks quite easier, like title tag, meta descriptions, hreflang tag, schema code generation, etc. So more on the topic of low buy-in. So how do we kind of get around this? So examples of reasons for this might be no time within the departments, SEO isn't in their priority list of job descriptions, and the departments have their own targets. So how can we basically get around this? So going back to when we set the global KPIs and related them to the business targets and got buy-in from the CEO, senior team, etc., we can kind of rely on that to say, okay, we've got the buy-in already, but the next step is to then relate these to individual team targets. So, a lot of teams I dealt with relied mostly on, events to get leads, offline leads. And so I say, okay, how many leads do you need to generate? What's the shortfall? I can generate all these leads for you if you help me do these tasks. Incentivize. So think about, ways that you can incentivize with department heads, hitting KPI sprints. Process and support it, so make it super easy for people to just do the work, be able to pick up the phone and chat to you whenever, and basically you just validate it and you get into a nice rhythm. And maybe think about promoting career development if it's of their interest, to add SEO to their bullet list on the CV or LinkedIn, and trying to get some EEAT content out of them by making them authors, because it'll increase their visibility in the industry. And most importantly, in my experience, is building relationships, so finding out how people work and communicate, what's important to them, where their strengths and weaknesses are, and basically trying to work with that as much as possible. So if I can summarize all of that, because there's quite a lot of best practice stuff in there, I would say define the goals and KPIs from the start and get buy-in and back it up with data. Research and prioritize the regions versus tasks that you need to do in them and the budgets to allocate. And use internal resources as much as possible and build relationships with the team. So that's my talk, and thanks a lot, guys.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.